Wintertime in North America is a tough period for any species involved. The bears go on great journeys to seek shelter in high dens of the mountains for hibernation. Some birds travel absurd distances to migrate just as the air begins to cool, and the animals that do stick around improvise and do whatever they can to make it till spring, us included. However, in some small towns and even cities, deer and some birds find a strange relationship with another type of animal, who most likely claim they have it the hardest during this turn of season. Without fear nor any way to communicate, they drag their hooves on deck boards, patios, and welcome mats to await their meal, and the chef, a lonely, hyper-introspective bipedal mess, gladly accepts their company, for humans tend to make matters worse for themselves. When the day begins just before lunch and ends just as dinner touches the table, the feelings of atmospheric claustrophobia set in for some. To find the sun absent at 4 p.m. can be a despairing feeling, knowing that whatever else is in store before the evening ends will be cloaked in the thick, cold darkness of winter. To wake up and find the top of your sheets ice cold and to set your feet on the floor only to be woken up by a shiver traveling through your bones. In the early months, one could lose hope in ever feeling the sun's warmth. We fall inwards. Days are spent indoors. Sometimes it's cozy, like a fire and hot chocolate, or with friends and a family on Christmas morning. Yet it can also surround one in an eerie feeling of losing touch with the moving world. Memories will strike you, and it becomes evident you can't distinguish it from this morning or 2 days ago. We engage, and find by the end of it, we don't recognize ourselves. We sink into routines with no defiance or identity, and become one with daytime television and screens, only to find the shell of a mind with no motivation for anything. We get sick of being our only company, and so we see ourselves in the deer that cannot dig for food, or in the bird that cannot spot anything in the bleak white blanket, inclining some to begin a relationship. It was last winter. I found myself working at a job that lent me enough hours to technically make a difference, but not enough to actually do anything with. I engaged with people at a till all day until they began to appear like the same person. I complained more than usual, I was thinking more than what is considered healthy, and I was changing my future every couple of weeks. After a hostile encounter, I decided to leave the mountains and head east. Yet there I found the same loneliness and empty core. However, upon my return in late March, I began to feel a change in the air. Just as the birds begin to return, and the bears climb down from their rocky layers into the foothills, I too felt that intuitive spark that says, leave. I was officially done in April, and was longing for a specific place. Cabin. Along a 5-hour drive, we go past glaciers, mountains, sheep that can climb literal walls, and bears that are compelled to search campsites, to eventually find ourselves nestled deep in the Rockies in a cabin built in the 70s, in front of a glacier-fed lake. Perhaps my nostalgia of going there as a child was active, or going with my brother or friend, but whatever it was, I knew in some sense it was essential.
Actually, is there quicksand here?
So in June, me and my friend Carson packed up his SUV and took our many assorted items to the little propane-fueled cabin up near Jasper National Park. After a few trips into town and a few forgotten items, we finally could settle into the way of life I had envisioned since the snow began to melt. Back in the earlier months of the year, I was developing a connection with nature that seemed to have been dormant. I wandered the frost-covered caverns, valleys, creeks, and riverbeds with the silence and solitude that settles in out in the backcountry to let my mind be. It was a delight to find that I had a friend in myself that I could travel with. He wasn't annoying, stressed out, or childish. Maybe a little anxious when off trail, but I was starting to appreciate his company. In this time, I thought that the possibility of us two heading out with a friend come springtime was a delightful idea for a refuge, and that word stuck with me till we arrived. It was an early drive. We took off around 11 in the morning and began our week of serenity. We decided to stop in Jasper for some food and then pressed on for the remaining few hours until we hit the road marked the Scenic Route to Alaska. Along that road, many unmarked roads lie. Lakes and rivers, bridges and tunnels lead all the way to the American border to Russia, Alaska. We weren't heading that far, maybe just half an hour on the bumpy road before turning into a little neighborhood of cabins, tucked deep in the forest. Finally, we find ourselves at the cabin around 5. After dragging everything in, we hit the lake to go see if the floating dock is there. Unfortunately, it isn't. They cook us up some burgers and we enjoy the sunset, allowing us to enter terrestrial time. I felt a sigh of relief to be here. I was away from the noise and at the doorway of nature. I wrote a few things in my journal by the fire, under the moonlight, before drifting into a deep sleep. It feels exactly as I thought here. Pure peace and solitude. A place of refuge to recharge and find some meaning out of yourself. This is the best environment for self-fulfillment and awareness. The consciousness is spread throughout the environment. We decided to take the canoe out to an island deep out in the lake. It is visible only after getting around the point near the dock. Upon arrival, I was reminded of an event that took place last year with my brother and his friend. We'd sailed out to the island for the first time in the hopes of a place to explore. Yet once we docked the canoe, a pair of geese began to swim towards us with speed and vigor. It was most likely that they had eggs on the island, yet we had eggs in the fridge, so the thought did not even enter our minds. My brother and his friend began paddling, leaving me stuck on the shore with geese. They would sink deep into the water before rocketing up, flapping their wings next to the boat. They finally backed up enough for me to jump in, and we left the geese with their eggs and island. I sought to mend this broken bridge by creating a sign for the geese, letting them know it was truly their property. It was also on these rides that the strange thoughts began to enter my mind as they naturally do. I like to blame it on the fact that the lake is glacier-fed. Glaciers, over millions of years, move and melt into countless bodies of water, including the one we are so lucky to reside by. Secrets of the wild mountains, old Earth, and the universe are nestled into the fabric of the yellow rocks under the water, the mirror-like stillness of the lake, and every organism that benefits from its nutrients. When sitting upon the mirror, with the blue sky and mountains to surround you, it whispers its secrets to you in the wind, or in the still moments when an animal is spotted. It led us to some pretty neat conversations. There is great wisdom in nature. It is the essence and prime example of oneness. It balances itself unjudgmentally and creates life out of nothing. It responds to itself accordingly, yet without self. It is true oneness. And the greatest intelligence, passive wisdom. When thinking of its systems, participants, and motions, we could find no bias, no wants nor desires, no defiances of its own philosophy. Perhaps the best way to put it is that if we were the Earth, we would most likely enjoy summer more than the other three. Yet the Earth, in its wise, unparalleled ways, prepares itself for winter during fall, and allows itself to enter its, so perceived, least favorite time, with no fuss. One evening, we both sat still in the canoe for maybe 20 minutes, watching the pink in the sky fade into the lake, as tiny drops of water fell into the mirror, disturbing its reflection in the most fascinating of ways. It was as if we were being spoken to. One rainy day, I decided to construct the sign after lunch. While Carson read a book in the cabin, I decided on a circle and then chose a design. With a few coats of green and a little bit of decals in white, it was ready to be assembled and planted. After the rain cleared up, we took our treaty to the Geese out. It was a beautiful ride, and the sun began to shine as we arrived. We dug a spot for it near an opening in the trees and placed it in. It made us happy and fulfilled as we sat around and skipped rocks on the island, with no geese to protest. As usual, the trip felt too short. We packed up and headed back through the snowy mountains to return to a similar life. It was different, however. A new way of thinking and a new connection had followed us all the way home to find its uses in our new environment. When entering the truck at the start, it was 3 of us, and by the end of it, we both had acquired a new friend to consult and to enjoy the company of in Solitude, despite their lack of personality. I returned a few months later with my brother after he graduated. We fished lots, cut tons of wood, and had great talks. But most of all, I was happy to introduce him to my new friend.